let us find the components of the velocity vector for a projectile which is thrown at a certain angle above horizontal. So what I mean by that is, let's look at something where a projectile actually sort of flies like this. So it is initially moving in an upward direction. Let's draw ourselves a coordinate system. This here shall be the x direction, this shall be the y direction, and now let's assume the projectile is launched initially in this direction. So this is the vector v0, and it is at an angle of theta above the horizontal. We now call this piece here the y component of that velocity vector, and we call this piece here the x component of the velocity vector. So note that, of course, and this also here, this piece here is the same as the x component. Likewise, this piece here is the y component. So the x component is parallel to the x-axis. The y component is parallel to the y-axis. Now remember what you learned about sines, cosines, and tangents, and you might have heard about so, car, tor. What does that mean? The sine of the angle theta, what is that? It is the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. Opposite to the angle, this is the angle, this is the hypotenuse, so opposite to the angle is here the y component. So what it is v naught y, and that is divided by the hypotenuse, which just has the length v naught, the magnitude of that vector. I can multiply this now left and right with v naught. What I then get is, I find that v naught times the sine of theta, that is the y component of my initial velocity vector. So the sine is the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. The cosine of theta is the adjacent to the angle divided by the hypotenuse. So the adjacent to the angle is v naught x divided by v naught. I again can multiply this left and right with the magnitude of the vector, and what I then find is that v naught times the cosine of theta, that will be my x component. So I can find the x and y components provided I know what the magnitude v naught of the velocity vector is and what the angle above the horizontal is. So just for completeness, then you know also then that the tangents of the angle theta is the opposite divided by the adjacent. So the opposite is v naught y, and the adjacent is v naught x. Another good way to remember which one is the sine and the cosine is just to look at the two words opposite and adjacent. So the opposite has to do with the sine. It has the letter S in there. And the adjacent has the letter C in there, as in cosine.